India possesses abundant sunlight and agricultural diversity. Yet, at the cellular level, these environmental riches often fail to reach the population. The precise epidemiological deficits for the Indian phenotype are stark. 75% of the population lacks adequate vitamin D, 47% is deficient in B12, 35% in folate, and 30% in zinc. These specific deficits rarely stem from absolute caloric starvation. The necessary nutrients exist within the regional food supply, and caloric intake easily sustains basic activity. The actual culprit is a systemic absorption bottleneck. Modern lifestyle variables have severed metabolic pathways, making it impossible to assimilate the nutrients we ingest. These blockades generally fall into three specific categories: pharmacological interventions that block cellular receptors, environmental isolation from natural synthesis triggers, and improper chemical processing of food. Mapping the physiological pipeline of 5 critical micronutrients reveals exactly where these biological systems fail. Dietary intake remains biologically meaningless as long as the cellular bioavailability pathways remain blocked. A 75% vitamin D deficit triggers a severe and specific pathology. Patients experience chronic systemic fatigue, muscular cramping, and degraded bone density, symptoms that persist despite a healthy diet or adequate sleep. The primary blockade is environmental. Indoor living and the daily application of chemical sunscreens physically prevent the cutaneous synthesis of the vitamin that normally occurs in the skin. The clinical baseline for human synthesis is demanding. In summer, exposing 25% of the body for 10 minutes provides adequate synthesis. In winter, with only 10% of the body exposed, that requirement leaps to 2 hours of direct exposure. Mushrooms synthesize vitamin D outside the body when exposed to UV radiation. The data shows an exponential yield. 1 hour of UV yields 1,000 international units. 8 hours climbs to 46,000. At 14 hours, synthesis hits 267,000 units of absorbable vitamin D. Standard allopathic supplements deliver a massive short-term dosage ranging from 20,000 to 60,000 units. Plant-based alternatives offer a much lower daily dose, typically between 600 and 1,000 units, which requires consistent long-term use. Isolated D3 supplementation introduces a physical risk: calcification. Without routing, calcium deposits build up as hard plaques inside arterial walls. The body requires vitamin K to route that calcium out of the vascular system and into porous bone structure. Maintaining this routing mechanism requires consistent dietary sources of vitamin K, specifically cold-pressed oils, green leafy vegetables, and dried figs. Vitamin D supplementation remains an incomplete system without concurrent vitamin K routing and adequate UV preprocessing. B12 levels in North India show a 47% deficit. When blood serum drops below 150 picograms per milliliter, the body triggers extreme fatigue, mood instability, and systemic autoimmune responses. The primary blockade is pharmacological. Routine medications like metformin and chronic antacids physically block the cellular receptors required for B12 absorption. A second bottleneck is hydrological. Reverse osmosis water filters aggressively strip vital trace minerals from the domestic water supply. This demineralization process removes cobalt, the foundational element required for B12 synthesis, while simultaneously degrading the vital flora in the gut. Internal B12 production correlates directly with the density and strength of the gut microbiome. Rebuilding this flora requires fermented substrates like idli, dosa, and kanji. Combined with high-quality dairy, these provide both the microbial environment and a direct source of B12. A botanical bypass involves adding moringa leaves to everyday dough or rice, which has been shown to rapidly elevate blood serum levels. B12 functions as a complex organic compound that internal bacteria must actively manufacture, a process modern lifestyle variables are actively dismantling. Zinc dictates testosterone synthesis, sperm production, and dermatological repair, yet the population-level deficiency rate remains at 30%. Ingesting high volumes of whole foods yields no metabolic return if their molecular locks are not dissolved prior to digestion. A 35% deficit in folate, or B9, manifests as mucosal lesions, yellowish skin, and dangerous neural tube deformities during pregnancy. Folate's primary mechanical role is the synthesis of DNA and the continuous creation of new blood cells. This model tracks the primary cause of deficiency: Dietary monotony. Consuming the same narrow selection of grains year-round slowly depletes the body's folate reserves. Enforcing a rigorous seasonal rotation of varied grains and pulses restores internal levels, preventing B9 deficiency. The highest yield agricultural sources for this rotation are beetroot, dark grain vegetables, citrus fruits, and papaya. Biological resilience at the DNA level requires agricultural diversity. The human body actively penalizes unchanging, static eating habits. Magnesium is the heart's stabilizing mineral, yet it is found to be deficient in over 80% of myocardial infarction cases. Mechanical signs of a failing magnesium supply include acute morning stiffness, chronic muscle cramping, and systemic high blood pressure. The behavioral bottleneck is diuretic flushing. High consumption of alcohol, coffee, and sodas forces the body to rapidly drain its magnesium reserves through the urine. Magnesium enters the vasically relax and widen arterial walls, ensuring smooth blood flow against calcium buildup. The biological mirror is exact. Just as iron forms the core of human hemoglobin, magnesium sits at the center of plant chlorophyll. Restoring these levels requires an intake of chlorophyll-dense sources like green beans, capsicum, and millets. For severe clinical deficits, magnesium glycinate provides a highly bioavailable alternative to standard synthetic pills. Absorbing these fat-soluble nutrients requires a lipid vehicle. Traditional Bologna method A2 cow ghee provides the necessary transport, lubricating the intestines to maximize absorption. Pairing these lipids with ancient, low-gluten wheat varieties like capliata further optimizes gut transit and reduces systemic inflammation. A resilient cardiovascular system depends on the active management of mineral ratios and the consistent maintenance of lipid transport. Reframing nutritional health as an engineering problem reveals that bioavailability, not caloric volume, is the metric of survival. Reclaiming our health requires dismantling the blockades of pharmacological interference, demineralized water, and anti-nutrient inhibition. Activating the nutrients in our food requires specific pre-processing protocols, UV irradiation, microbial fermentation, and prolonged aqueous soaking. Without these preparation protocols, standard healthy eating remains mechanically broken at the cellular level. By respecting these precise physiological mechanics, we breach the gap between environmental abundance and true cellular sufficiency.